Hi, everybody. Today we are going to talk about the subject of failing as a family caregiver. A lot of caregivers recently have told me, Pamela, I feel like I'm just failing. I feel like I can't keep up, and I feel like I'm not doing a good job. Now, today we're going to talk about failure, specifically related to a loved one that we care for dying or circumstances that lead up to that death. So if this is not a subject that you are comfortable with, I suggest that you just press the button and turn off the video. If you are, stay with me. I'm Pamela D Wilson. My website is pameladwilson.com. On there, a lot of hope, help, and support for family caregivers and aging adults. So caregivers become caregivers because mostly health issues, right? Your aging parent or a spouse or sibling or friend or somebody else has health conditions that they need help with. Maybe they can't manage around the house as well as they used to, or you are attending medical appointments or treatments with them, or helping them manage their medications. A whole list of things results in people becoming caregivers. And you become a caregiver because you want to help, because you want to help your loved one feel better and live a better life, and you love the person. You have an emotional attachment to the results of their medical care, or the results of them taking care of themselves, or the results of doing all of these things, right? You love them. And in most cases, even if you are a caregiver and you don't love them, you feel a duty to do all of these things. And so the best way for me to explain this is I'm going to tell a true story of a caregiving situation gone bad, because I want caregivers to realize that when you're a caregiver, there are things that are in your control and there are things that are not in your control. And sometimes we as caregivers hold on so tightly because we're afraid of our loved one dying, or we're afraid of something happening, and we can sometimes do a little too much or be a little too controlling, or rely on other people to help and hope that our parents will take care of themselves. But there's so many things that you don't control. You don't control the healthcare system, or doctors, or hospitals, or nurses, or in-home caregivers. So there's all of these things that you don't control. And so the path to avoiding feeling like you are failing as a caregiver is really not to ignore all of these issues, and to have honest discussions within your family about what you can do, what you can't do, what your parents are willing to do, what they're not willing to do, medical providers, what they can do, what they can't do, and all of this. And more importantly, what care does your loved one want? Because sometimes knowing that can give you the peace of mind to realize that you're not failing. You're following the direction of a parent or a spouse. And so let me give you kind of like a hint on this to situations that you might be involved in where you're saying no, or you're refusing help, which caregivers do, that might lead to you feeling like you're a failure down the road, 6 months, 12 months, a year from now. If you're in any situation with a doctor or healthcare professional, or even a care manager or a counselor or someone, and they bring up a topic and your mind immediately goes to, "Oh, no, that's not for me. I don't have time to think about that. I don't want to deal with it. That scares me." These are subjects that you may be in denial about. They may be subjects that you should think about and consider the consequences. Because if someone's telling you this, like a doctor, or even myself in a care consultation, we're telling you because we know of things that happen, of things that can happen in the future that we would like to help you avoid, but we can't do that without your participation. We can't do that without your attention. And when families are in denial about these things, sometimes you just push them aside, and they do turn into bigger problems later. So Having these family caregiving discussions can be difficult, especially if you don't know what you're talking about or you don't know all the options. And so part of failing as a family caregiver can be saying, oh, I don't have enough time to investigate this, or not getting help for yourself, or not making the time. And I realize that so many caregivers don't have time. You are so rushed. You're so stressed. It's so difficult. I get that. All of those aspects can lead to potential mistakes or what caregivers see as failures. Now, it's my opinion that caregivers trying to do the right thing never fail, right? But there are all these outside circumstances that can make you feel like you failed, or things that you wish you would have done. How many times do all of us ever say, oh my gosh, I wish somebody would have just told me that? Well, maybe they did, and you didn't listen, or you weren't in a place to listen, or you were too busy, or it just went right over your head because there was so much going on. So when you think about your parents' health, here's one big thing to consider. You didn't cause your parents' health issues, okay? Their actions did. That is something that you do not control. Now, your health issues, you likely participated in those. Some can be hereditary, some can be caused by lifestyle and things that we do or don't do. Many caregivers are constantly going. You want to be so helpful. You wear yourself down, you get sick, you have health issues. That is something that you are responsible for. Do you consider that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your parents or a spouse or a loved one? That's why self-care is so important, but many caregivers sacrifice their health to the detriment of the people they care for, and then you become the person that needs the care. You become the care receiver. The person who needs care can feel like a failure because they might think, oh my gosh, I should have listened to my doctor years ago. He told me to quit smoking, or they told me this could happen and I just didn't listen. It wasn't important. I didn't care. But then there are all of these things that can happen in care situations when more people get involved. So doctors, home health, all of that we may or may not know to pay attention to because we don't have that experience. The bottom line when caregivers feel like they've failed related to someone in the family dying is that, first of all, nobody wants to be sick and die. We all have a fear of dying in pain or dying alone or having a horrible death. And so, unfortunately, though, this happens a lot of times in care situations because caregivers don't know to be proactive. Because we are attached to our mom or our dad or our spouse, we want them to keep living because we want them in our lives. But the question we have to ask ourselves is that really in everyone's best interest? And I know that sounds like a crazy question. But let's say your loved one has cancer and they're going through chemo treatments and they're going through radiation and they feel horrible. And they're doing this because you're saying, I want you to get better. I want you to be here with me. I can't live without you. Are you putting your guilt and your feelings on your loved one? And so they are agreeing to do things they would have never agreed to do if you weren't there. I know that's a hard subject to think about, but it happens in many families. There's also situations where you think you as the caregiver are providing good care or other people are providing good care, and then you learn that something happened and there was a huge gap and you feel guilty. And so I'm going to give an example of this. So let's say that your mom or dad needs a lot of care and they may live in your home or they could live in an assisted living community or in a nursing home, and you're being the caregiver, you're doing the oversight, you're watching things, but you have other people involved. And in this case, let's say you have other people involved in like bathing and dressing because either you don't have time or that's something that you're not comfortable doing. And maybe you have doctor appointments and you have, somebody else is taking them to the doctor, or the doctor's coming to the care community to visit them. And all of a sudden you get a call saying, your mom or dad, or, someone in your home, the caregiver coming to your house says, well, your mom or dad has this huge sore on their bottom. And these are called bed sores. You can Google the meaning of that. But basically it's a place on the skin that maybe initially started looking like a bruise, but now it's an open wound and it's not healing, and these wounds can get bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, if it's a care community and you have your parent there could be a lack of training by those caregivers to know to report those kind of things to their supervisor or to the doctor who visits. Or there may be a delay where the caregiver makes the report and the doctor who visits isn't going to show up for 2 weeks. Well, a wound that's not cared for over a period of 2 weeks can get significantly worse. So then now your parent has this horrible health issue and you feel responsible because you should have known to watch for this, or maybe you should have been doing skin checks, or the caregiver should have known better, or the doctor should have known better. These are the kinds of situations that you really don't control unless you know what to look for. And so how do you know what to look for? Well, that is where the doctors and the healthcare professionals who are telling you things like, well, it's not good for your mom or dad to sit in a chair all day. They can get sores. They can get more physically weak. They can have other health issues. You have to be inquisitive enough to say, why is that important? What questions should I be asking? What should I know about that? What can happen? And many times, because caregivers are so busy, these are the questions that you don't think to ask. So this kind of all goes back to the fact that, in life and failure. So failure in life and failure in caregiving can be kind of two different things. Failure in life can be like, not persistent enough. I give up. I don't have a positive attitude. All that relates to caregiving. But in caregiving, there are health issues that you do not control, and health issues that are going to get worse no matter what you do. Health issues that you cannot prevent, and health issues that you identify that are already so progressed that you really can't do anything about them except to be proactive and learn about palliative care and learn about hospice care and learn how to keep your loved ones comfortable before it's so late in the game that so many things have happened. I will have caregivers who say to me, Pamela, how do I know when it's time for palliative care or hospice care? Well, if the health of your parent is complicated and their health is not stable and it's kind of going like this, that might be the time to start asking these questions so that you can have these discussions in your family, have these discussions with healthcare providers, learn what you should know, what you should watch out for, everything that can happen so that you don't feel like you're a failure. Because in many cases, you are doing everything that you should, or everything that you can, or everything that you could possibly know. There's just all of these things that can happen. And in my opinion, no caregiver who's been dedicated to the life of a parent or a spouse should ever feel guilty. But you can be more proactive to avoid those feelings of guilt. I'm Pamela D Wilson. My website is PamelaDWilson.com. I know this is a complicated subject. There's a lot of information on my website, in my online course, Taking Care of Elderly Parents, on my weekly podcast called The Caring Generation, in the library on my website, hundreds of videos here on YouTube. Please share this information with people that you know who are struggling, who are looking for hope, help, and support, and maybe who feel a little out of control in their caregiving situation. Have a fabulous day today. I'll see you all again soon in another video.